things obviously sport and other things throughout the talk. And Caroline's over in Manchester at the minute getting ready for a busy weekend in sport, and Peter's doing some research for his next PE lesson in his Holy Trinity in Cookstown. So you just see the difference, the way things have moved on. But,
just on that, Patrick. Sorry, Patrick. You did welcome Caroline as Dr. Caroline O'Hanlon. Just to make you aware, I do have a doctorate. So if you want to welcome me as Dr. Canavan, I'm happy with that.
Okay, so sorry, let's go back then. So it's Dr. Peter Canavan, who got his honorary doctorate from Jordanstown. Sorry, it was where did you get that from? Queens or Jordanstown?
It's actually University of Ulster, Patrick.
Oh, sorry, University of Ulster, honorary doctor for services to humanity. All right. All right. Okay. So listen, you're very welcome today. And Peter, I suppose we'll start with ourselves, and maybe on a bit of a sad note. Yesterday was an emotional day in Tyrone, and we both lost a friend, Fergal, who passed away quite. I suppose it was a bit unexpectedly. We didn't hear much about it until you told me last week about it. And Fergal was I went to school with Fergal, and obviously then we had a sort of a connection through football, and Fergal would have worked with you for a couple of years with Tyrone back in 05 and 08, and really it's a very sad day for not just Roisin and the family, but for the entire McCann family and the GAA people in Tyrone.
Oh, absolutely. Paddy, I was speaking to you earlier, just it was hard to take it in yesterday that where we were and what had actually happened. Look, there's been a lot of nice things said about Fergal in recent days, but I think what struck a chord with me, Tony Donnelly had mentioned that not only is a lot of people lost a really good coach, and we in the GAA community have lost a really good coach, but a lot of people have lost a real sound friend.
That's right.
And to put a lot of people in the picture, I suppose Fergal came to prominence with the Tyrone team in 2005. Now, we just won All Ireland in 2003. Yourself being the coach in 03 and 04. So Fergal came in on the back of that. And from a coaching point of view, that was a difficult step up for him to make, to come into that squad. And he managed to win the players over, not by what he was saying, it was by what he was doing and how professional he was on the pitch. He never attempted to win anybody over.
Yeah.
He was just meticulous in his planning. If the players needed something, he was there. If they needed an extra session, he was there. He put himself out. And in a world now, Paddy, where we have a lot of self-publicists about, and even in the coaching game, there's a lot of people very good at putting themselves out there. Fergal McCann's biggest trait was that despite all the successes that he had, he remained a completely down-to-earth, a really humble man, very respectful to all who he came into contact with. And I would say that was his greatest strength. And immediately after, when the word became out or relevant that he wasn't going to make it, there was a wee group set up with the Tyrone players from 05 and 08 and all the rest. And everybody was on board with a wee video message sent to himself and to Roisin and the kids. And I mean everybody. And some of the things that the boys was saying about, I wasn't aware of how and things that he did for them. So
yeah, really
tough one for the people in Ahar and further afield. So we're just come to terms. It's very hard to believe.
Absolutely, a sad day, but I suppose that's life, and that's sport, and maybe this is one of the things that connects so much people together through football or through sport, and that's probably what connects us all together. Caroline, you're as a very quick chat to you before you come on, and I mentioned you're over in Manchester. I suppose for our students, we have our students on here at the moment, and they're coming in by the numbers, and this will be recorded, obviously, got out onto our website later on too. But sort of explain your situation, Caroline. You're over there now, and you're representing Manchester Thunder in netball, and tell us sort of what's Caroline, your time management between your careers as a GP, your football for Armagh, and also the netball, international netball. Sometimes you wonder how you do it all, Caroline. So tell us what's happening with you at the moment over there. Explain to the students what's going on.
So yeah, I play for Manchester Thunder. So they are one of 11 franchises in the UK Super League. So it's basically like the Premiership of netball. Teams across England, and then there's a team in Scotland and a team in Wales, and play each other twice. And I suppose we got to go ahead to go with the league on account of getting the elite sports status. So what that means is they sort of made put protocols in place in order to ensure safety. So some changes that they made were that all our games will be played at centralised venues. So for the first half of the season, all games are played at Wakefield, which is just outside Leeds. And then the second half of the season, the games are played in the Copper Box in London. So all teams have to try to obviously adhere to the national guidelines. But in addition to that, they've also implemented regular testing. So we test every Wednesday and then 24 hours before a game.
Okay.
And then that has to all be reported obviously centrally. Within that, then if someone tests positive, then the team and if you've played a match, the opposing team and the officials have to isolate for 2 weeks.
My God, so
so it's a big commitment from everyone. So they have really put a lot of pressure on individuals within the franchises to adhere to the protocols, and our club I think have been really good with that and really strict with that. And there was publicity lately where we had a player suspended for 2 weeks because she put on Facebook or put on Instagram or something that she'd broken the rules, or just put a picture up that it was obvious that she'd broken the rules. So the club made a stand, and I suppose set the tone for everything, that they were going to be really, really strict with that so that everybody felt safe in the environment.
It's very, very professional stuff. Did I read last week that Paul Scholes' daughter make her debut last week for Manchester Thunder?
Funny you mention her, because that's the she made her debut. So Alicia Scholes. So she's Paul's daughter. And Paul's a big supporter of the club. He's been brilliant and very vocal on social media, on interviewing and going to the games. So he is a really big supporter. Same with the Nevilles.
That's right.
So it's brilliant to have that kind of high profile backing. But Liz has come through. She came through the Thunder pathway, so they have a really good underage structure within the club. So the majority of our players actually come through there. So it's only myself and our shooter who haven't come through that pathway within our squad of 15.
Very
so
good.
So she came the whole way through the pathway and then made her debut last week. So she was delighted, and obviously it's brilliant to see.
Good stuff, Peter. We're probably all in envy here of Caroline at the moment, being able to play sport. And I'm sure when we look at ourselves, especially with the lockdown over here, we have an entire university year now that haven't got an opportunity to play any, say, fresher football or Sigerson Cup football. And you talked to us a while. We talked about the lads maybe in Holy Trinity in 7th year this year that missing out on Marquee Cup football or Macquarie Cup football, whatever it is. So it's been a very tough time for the young people.
Absolutely. You take it that the 7th years at the minute, Paddy, and in a lot of cases there's lads have come into the school and have played the whole way up, and from first year and so many, not only our school but in so many schools around, they're all waiting to get representing the school at senior football, and Macquarie Cup in our case is the pinnacle. So they've waited 7 years in this. Maybe in some cases lads have come back to school more concerned about the football than they have about their studies. But so look, it's a massive setback. It's a massive disappointment for them. But that's life. We've had a major setback in recent days here in Tyrone, and guaranteed moving forward, the young fellas and the young girls that are playing football and sport at the minute, you mightn't like it. It's not easy to deal with. But as you progress in your career, no matter what your field is, there's going to be plenty of hurdles and there's going to be plenty of setbacks that you're going to have to deal with. So this is one of them, and it's difficult for so many. But fingers crossed, give us a few weeks and we'll be back out on the pitches again.
Good man. Hey, just on that there, most people, a lot of ones that maybe listen to this today wouldn't even realise that you never actually played any underage football, club football. And really the only football you got underage was maybe back in school in St. Kieran's. And that would have been if nowadays if you said a young fella you're not allowed to play any club football or underage but you're 18 or you're 17 or 18, you see that as been a massive miss out. Like, you say, God, how are you supposed to progress as a young player if you don't play any underage up until you're 18? But it didn't seem to hold you back. What was that about?
Well, it's a long story, Paddy, and I think we only have 45.
I know the story, but why did that hold you back?
Well, again, back to the point I made earlier, you're going to encounter setbacks and difficulty. So in my case, it was not getting competitive club football. I still had a club. I was still going to training. I was still getting in plenty of practice. And in later years, a lot of people better qualified than me would have suggested that the fact that I didn't get a lot of competitive football give me more time to hone in on the various individual skills involved in Gaelic football, and I certainly did that. I don't think anybody that I would have went to school with, yourself included, I don't think anybody would have put in the same hours of practice, of individual practice, down at our local pitch. So that certainly benefited me. And one example that I give when I'm speaking to youngsters about learning the game, first or second year, I think it was second year maybe, in St. Kieran's, we had a fairly strong team, but I didn't make the team. And the manager, one of the managers, who will remain nameless, thought that I was a bit too small and that needed to strengthen up a wee bit. And so I didn't take this too well. So again, you have a choice. Do you blame the manager or do you go and do something about it? I couldn't do anything about my height, but I could do something about my skills. And, from there on, I was working with my left and the right foot. So when it came to the next year's school, I had improved that much that he had no other choice but to play me on the team. So again, regarding that not being involved in competitive sport, it's what you do with that time yourself. And a lot of people now are finding that they're not getting competitive sport. So it's up to you to address, individually weaknesses in your game and areas that you can work on, so that when we do get back playing again, that you will be stronger in certain areas maybe that you weren't before.
Yeah, it does sound just crazy at the moment if you're, say, a young fella, you're not getting any sport until you're 15 or 16 and you're supposed to develop, because there's nearly like a rule now. You have to go through all these different stages, and this is the pathway, and this is proven, and research is showing you have to have 10,000 hours of practice and all this type of stuff. But that would all benefit being, Peter, is that maybe the fact no injuries, no abuse, less abuse. You come in, suppose you hit about 16 or 17 and you start to really develop as a player, and you get a bit stronger, and that maybe time of not being competitive wouldn't have done you an awful lot of harm either.
Well, the big thing, Paddy, that is very hard to measure in players is hunger. And this word hunger is maybe overused in sport. But the fact that I missed out on so many games, competitive games, whenever we did play games, I was ultra competitive, as right. You would know at that stage. So, and the example in the Throne Championship that I used last year, we had the best ever, and a lot of your students either participated or maybe seen a lot of the games. A lot of them were on TV. We had our best ever championship in Throne last summer, and I think part of the reason was that players had missed out so much at the start of the year. There was a natural hunger and an appetite just to get back playing games again, and the fact that they weren't overtrained because they didn't have time collectively to be overtrained, and as a result of that, the quality of the football was much improved. And individual with some brilliant individual performances, and I would attribute that to that hunger and appetite factor from not having too many games. So I'd like to think that perhaps that benefited me somewhat in my younger days as well.
Just carrying that there. How do you maintain? You're playing multi sports, and I used to no more. You used to admire the fact you had to come off a 12-hour shift in the Royal, come across, and then basically whipped our asses around the basketball court and race here. And Peter, I'm not calling you here. You're picking teams. The first person you wanted in the team was Charlie. There's the one you picked. It didn't matter. And as long as Charlie's your team, you had a chance you might win. And this is after coming off a shift. And then you go and you do a gym session in the gym, and then you're telling me you're training with Armagh later on that night. And I was going, how do you maintain this? Like, so Caroline, how do you maintain this hunger, as Peter talked about? Do you ever get to the stage where you're just burnt out or mentally fatigued, or just it doesn't seem to affect you?
I suppose if you start to feel like that, then it's probably time to start reflecting on whether you should keep doing it. For me, if you've come off work, and if I went home, say for instance another day, if I went home after that shift, you would sit and mull over what you'd done that day, what you didn't do, what decisions you made, how things, God, did I finish that? Do I need to check that? Worrying about things. Whereas I actually find that the best thing, going and completely clearing your head, doing a sport, even a sport's better than even go to the gym or going for a walk, because you have to fully engage in it. You have to, concentrate on the skill and the moment. So you're completely distracted from what you were doing before, and that all along, through university, through school, I've always found that was really helpful, just to have that. That was a complete break. So while you say it wasn't a rest, it was, you were physically exerting yourself. It was a complete rest for your mind, because you had to park everything that you had done that day. And then by the time you were finished the match, you were more worried about whether you won, whether you got clobbered by Archie or whatever, So you had parked for what you were doing and work. So for me, it's always been like therapeutic, really, to have that outlet that, as I say, completely, occupied your mind.
Clobbered by Archie, eh? That sounds so familiar. Clobbered by Archie.
Even when he was in your team, yeah.
Well, sometimes he was in your team, by the way. But you mentioned there university life, Caroline, and and obviously you're a high performer at Queen's as well, and playing. This is where you came to prominence, obviously, in your football and your netball, especially in your football. That time you come through, and you're probably the elite performer at Queen's, and then you moved on to be a elite performer for Armagh. Ladies, last year, obviously we'll have to sort of visit last year, maybe a sore point here, but getting to an Ireland final and being pipped by the Dubs, that doesn't here. We've all been there. Don't worry about that. We know what that's like. But what a run last year, and that'll stand to Armagh for the future, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was a semi-final, but yeah, Dublin, Dublin, but right. Yeah. But I suppose in a similar way to what Peter had touched on, it was a very different year for us as footballers. And I think that break did have a massive difference. And I suppose particularly looking at our county run, I think that we as a team really benefited from the fact that the club got a run. You got to run with your club, and the club championship was run off before we went into the county setup. And I think probably in a similar way to men's games, you have a big panel at the county, and half the players don't get game time. Yeah. So how does that not affect your confidence? How does that not affect your game, your sharpness, everything? So I think we massively benefit from the fact that all our players went back to their clubs, were getting regular match play, remembered why they were on a county team. They're the best players in their club. They've got that opportunity to build that confidence back up, and realize I actually am good enough, and came back refreshed and confident whenever the county had set up. The county setup came back, and I think that was massive in our run. You had suddenly 30 players who were sharp and confident to pick from, rather than the 15 regulars and people relying on injuries or a bit of luck to really get into a team. So I thought that was brilliant, and interesting, because you think that when you're on the county team, they're getting more football because they're training with the county and maybe training with the club or touching in with the club. But I think just getting regular match play and, as I say, getting a bit of momentum with your club was crucial to our success with the county.
Absolutely. And just by the way, anybody who's out there, the students and staff alike who are watching, if you want to send in a wee question to ask either Peter or Caroline, don't make them too difficult for Peter, by the way. Caroline can answer anything. But if you want to ask a wee question, put it in the wee text box and send it to me. Peter, just on that point there about, you just touched briefly on it. We had an incredible championship last year in Tyrone and both. But if you're watching across the board, and I watched a lot of the Down matches on the TV, I watched some of the Derry matches, Armagh TV. The club championships across all places were really, really good last year and competitive. And do you think there is merit in looking at this? Let's see. Obviously, they're deciding the split season now. Do you think this is the right move? Do you agree with it?
I do. I see Niall Scully today in the paper as voicing his concern about it. Actually, maybe that he's not convinced by it, but I think we only really have the example of last summer to work on, and without a doubt, I don't think anybody could argue that it wasn't a success. As someone that would have been heavily committed to the club as well, I think it is hard, and a lot of players find themselves in a position where they overtrain because maybe club managers, could be a new club manager coming in and he's under serious pressure to perform. I'm out training 2 or 3 times with the county, but maybe at the start of the year, the club players felt the county men on the team weren't given enough to the club. So that puts pressure on individual players, and there's club games going on as you're training with the county, maybe challenge games that the club managers arrange that he wants everybody taking part in. And in a lot of cases, fellas don't have problems doing this, but it's difficult and it's very hard to manage, and it can lead to players feeling frustrated. And the other point that Caroline made there about the big panels, the county panels of over 30, so more than half maybe aren't getting regular game time. So for that player who's number 21 upwards, and I've seen it in our own club, how difficult it is for them to come back in after spending months training with the county. They're seen as a county man, and they're expected, and they haven't got any game time yet. When they come back to their clubs, they're expected to deliver big performances, and they can't because they haven't been playing regular football, and it leaves them so frustrated. So again, I think the split season will help that. It's all club for so many months a year, and then it's all county, and players can go to that fully committed, and they don't have to worry or be concerned about what the club is doing as well. So very much a big fan of it. I think it will work. There's other things to be tweaked regarding fixtures in the GA and the format of our championship, but I think the split season is definitely a success. And the other thing, which I hope doesn't happen this year again, which is, in my opinion, has been an unqualified success, has been the interprovincial club competitions. So be it the junior, intermediate, Ulster intermediate, the amount of great games that I've seen at that level as well. So that's a brilliant competition for clubs. And the difference between club and county, if you're Division 3 at the minute in a county, you haven't any realistic hope of winning a major competition. And you're not going to win the Sam Maguire. So whereas in club football, you could be in Division 3, and if you win a Division 3 club title in Down or Derry or Tyrone, that's massive, and you have the opportunity of progressing to win an Ulster title with your club. So it's given everybody realistic hopes on what it does for clubs. So I hope that as the year progresses, and the reason why we need to get started is that we end up, we don't have to ditch those really brilliant interprovincial club competitions.
They're absolutely fantastic, and the club championship is very, very special. Just on that, when you think about when you think of the way the thing has changed this last number of years, especially with the onset of much more, we look at preparation and training and time. One of the biggest challenges I would say, we don't get enough games for the amount of training we do. We had a conversation last week here, Jim McGuinness on last week and Katie Mullen, and we were talking about, Katie was saying she's very busy at the minute. She's a hockey going on, but she also played a bit of camogie. She playing with Korean. But we've used some of the facts that some of the lads and girls were getting maybe training 10 training sessions every game of football. But when you work it out in the terms of a season, it's not sustainable. And no matter, you need to be playing matches. And this is where I think where our biggest challenge is we need to get more games and get away from this ethos where it's all about training, it's all about you do in the gym, it's all what you do in training, but actually reduce that and put more games in. So with a new structure, maybe the club players can play all their club games and play as many county games as possible, good for everybody. Do you agree with that?
And again, Paddy, I think that the split season helped that, because when your season is condensed, then you have to run more games. You have to play more games in a shorter period. And thankfully, with all the county boards now able to stream their own championships, for those that are mad into their football, you got to witness the Down games in the Down Championship and some great games in the Derry Championship. So the game's coming thick and fast. I'm very much in favour of it. There are those that would contend that at inter-county level, the games need to be spaced out and all the rest. There's pounds of 35, 40. There's no reason why you can't play the games every weekend. And back to years that we won All Ireland, and in 2005 in particular, we played 10 games. The matches were coming week on week, and it was brilliant. Less emphasis on training because we were recovering and concentrating on it. But it was brilliant, and so very much so. I would be all in favour of more games, less training.
So Caroline, say for example, if you're playing this year, like if you think of your netball, your commitments to say to Manchester Storm, and then you're thinking of your international commitments, and then your club commitments and your county commitments. Have you thought of how many games you could potentially play this year? Would that be? Have you thought of that?
No, well, I try not to think about that. I think, well, with Thunder, we have potentially 22 games between the middle of February and the start of July. So that's you're talking, one or two games most weekends, really, with the occasional weekend bye. And then with obviously at the moment with COVID, it's so uncertain. We don't know obviously what's gonna happen this year. But I suppose in years gone past, I would have had a game probably on the Sunday in the National League, or a club game maybe, if it lent itself to that. But I'm very much in favour of more matches. Like, I mean, you train to play matches. That's why we play sport as opposed to being athletes.
Yes, right.
And if you're not playing games all the time, like what's the point? So I'm very much in favour of that. If you could just play matches, that would be ideal.
Well, Caroline, tell me this much then. Obviously, with that, sports science now is played, and you're a doctor as well, so you're come from the medical background. But what aspects of sports science would you think has been most important to you in terms of your preparation as a high performing athlete?
I suppose just strength and conditioning has been obviously the biggest change in, I suppose, since I started playing. And you've seen how both sports, netball and Gaelic, have evolved, and the physicality of both sports compared to maybe even 10 years ago is massive, and just in terms of the speed and the skill level and everything, and just having even like a multidisciplinary support team is massive. But I'd say it's probably strength and conditioning has probably been the biggest addition and change in that space of time.
And Peter, yourself, what Ian, I know you're very heavily involved in the development of the new in Tyrone and looking to the future. Sports science, from your playing day to now, and even when you started playing at say high level football, say at 19 or 20, to now, what have you seen the biggest differences in football and preparation in terms of science?
I think less is better in many regards, and I think people obviously know that there's been a vast difference, number one. But you recall some of our training sessions and the training regimes we went through, the emphasis was on work and hard training, and not so much on how best to recover, and in terms of rehab and getting ready for games. It didn't come into it. So I think from that end of it, there's been a massive change. But nearly it has turned full circle now, and that maybe lads and lassies, when you do throw in a tough session, they find it really tough, maybe when you intended to do a wee bit more with them. So, but that's not a bad thing. I think gone are the days when we're running, you see youngsters running laps around a pitch and all the rest. It is all about ball work and improving the skills of the game, and with that various aspects of fitness. So that is a major advantage. But in terms of recovery and rehab and recuperation, I think the change in terms of sports science has been massive, and that can only be good for the game.
Yeah, Peter, and you're right. I think that's the less is more sometimes can be the thing, and being smart about understanding the principles of sports science and how to apply them in the right way. Let's go back a bit here, Peter, and we'll talk about you mentioned earlier on about drive and ambition and hunger, and you didn't want to get the wrong side of you in the change room, or you didn't want to have a bad first half, put that way, like when you were playing long, because you just cut you in two, and you're afraid of and you can see players being trembling if Canavan was in bad form, because Jesus Christ, we'll let him down. He's going to hit us here.
You're putting me in a very bad light here, Paddy.
Oh no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, you just wouldn't want to have a bad first half. But I'm saying is, Peter, like, being ultra competitive, and you had to be a winner. Do you think that we're too soft now on the modern? Do you think we've come maybe getting soft on the modern day player? Caroline, you may have a view on this as well. Do you think we've now become really afraid to you say pushing somebody hard in a training session? Or are we really getting the correct environment now? Is it getting too easy for young athletes?
Well, from being too harsh, maybe it's gone a bit too soft in that it's too easy now for youngsters and for children to feel that they're engaged in sport and all the rest, but all they're doing is sitting on the computer or sitting on a phone or a tablet or whatever. So and it's too easy to make friends without having to go out and speak to anybody and all the rest. So it is easier for a lot of them to find themselves in a comfort zone or to say. So yes, it's not as harsh as it once was, and with that comes difficulties in that it's harder maybe for young boys and girls now to build up those characteristics that they need for sport, the resilience and the perseverance that are vital if you're going to achieve in any level of sport. And you look what Caroline has achieved. I don't think she would have been able to do that without there's lots of times maybe she wouldn't have wanted to go to training, or she wanted a break or whatever, but mentally she's so strong and she toughed it out on a lot of occasions, and it's single-minded. So perhaps, Paddy, the modern world that we're in, it's everything is fast food and convenient lifestyle, and that's why sport, and that's why I know that the benefits to my own family and to the community here, the benefits of the GAA, because it gets people out, gets people meeting one another. Forget about what you do on the pitch, it gets them meeting, speaking to one another, and going through tough training sessions. A team always feels really together after they've been pushed to the limits by going through an hour and 20 minutes of stuff that you didn't think you would be able to finish. You've done it, and you've come out of the session together, feeling stronger as a unit, feeling good about yourself. So you do anything that's good in life, generally you have to work damn hard to get it, and you have to make some sacrifices. So it's getting that mindset into the younger generation now is maybe proven a wee bit more difficult than it used to be.
Yeah, and Caroline, on that point, we have a massive dropout rate. And we've said this last week, to Katie Mullen last week. We're very much aware of it, especially research into young female athletes in sport and school, and getting our students to go out to think about the impact they could have on young kids in school, and encourage them to play sport and stay at it, and do their PE in school, and then get tied up with the club and get involved. But there's a massive dropout rate in young girls from 14 or 15 onwards. And this is one of the challenges we have. How do we keep young girls especially engaged in sport? Not to say young fellas are the same, but certainly the age seems a bit earlier. Young girls are dropping out earlier. What's your advice to say our female students here that are going to be working in the future as coaches or as teachers and working with young girls in particular?
Yeah, I suppose Little Ireland and LGFA that have done a lot of research and have made a lot of investments in trying to address this, and different initiatives about with going into the schools, and I've been involved in that project where they're trying to address some of the reasons why girls drop out at that age. It's very, very difficult because, as you say, it's there's different factors. Obviously, with elite sport and performance sport, you need to develop that resilience, and people need to be able to deal with setbacks, and understand that it's competitive, and if you're dropped, and it's cutthroat, and that's what elite sport's about. And trying to get that balance at underage where you are obviously encouraging participation, and I suppose good coaches can identify when you need to be tough and when you need to put an arm around someone. And I suppose it is very difficult because at underage girls football in particular, there is a level of sensitivity, and we do need to focus more on encouragement, and trying to have a softer approach. But it is challenging because I don't when do you change that mindset, and when does it suddenly become as I say, more competitive? And I think we have this difficulty where people think because they've come to training that they must get on in the games, and that sort of level of entitlement that comes whenever you have that soft approach, and that dealing with, as I say, being cut or having to compete with others for positions is something that people need to deal with in everyday life. So it's trying to find that balance where you teach those skills and resilience that mirror life, but yet keeping them involved. I don't know the answer ultimately.
It's a tough. It is a tough.
But I think probably in underage female sports, trying to really maybe identify that those are skills that you're trying to work on, and maybe manage an expectation, and that everyone's not necessarily going to get picked, but you still have a role to play, and this is the value of sport, and this is the value of exercise, and just trying to have a manage expectations is probably going to be the best approach.
Karen, a question in here: who's the best player you ever played along with in Gaelic football?
Oh God, that's a difficult one. It's a difficult one in many ways, because you have the likes of the young players like Amy coming through, and the likes of Cora Staunton, who have unbelievable skills. But I suppose for me, the O'Donnell twins, they were probably the female equivalent of Kieran McGeeney, in terms of Armagh ladies football. Just that the drive, they were good, brilliant footballers, but the intensity that they brought every time that they were at training, the competitiveness, the aggression, everything was just on point every time that they went out. And I suppose that they had a big impact on me, because whenever I was breaking into the team, they were the center of the team, and so they probably had the biggest impact on me. And I suppose they would be what I would aspire to be as a player, or want to be seen as a player.
And you needed that when you're coming into a senior squad for the first time. You somebody to look up to. You mentioned Cora Staunton there, Karen. Did you ever think or consider going out to Australia to play AFL or to the AFL for a while?
I had some discussions at a point in time, but just in terms of career, and at the time that those discussions were happening, it wasn't really feasible. And I suppose I could have gone out, but I would have probably compromised my preparation. I was in a contract with work. I would have had to go out for a very short space of time in the run up to it, and you don't want to go out and make a show of yourself ultimately. Do you know what I mean? So if you're going out, I would want to be prepared and want to be trying to be as good as you could be out there. You don't want to be, as I say, making a show of yourself.
All right, Caroline, I don't know if you've got a chance to watch the highlights program on a Monday night from the ladies AFL, but people only think that ladies football, ladies GAA is physical. I was gobsmacked watching a number of games of physicality, and it goes beyond physical in a lot of cases. So I'd be interested as to what your take on it is, and do the Irish girls that go out there, are they aware of that? Are they aware how brutal, for want of a better word, a lot of the games are?
I know. Well, I'm sure Braid Stack's aware now at this stage, having a broken neck. But I know. I don't know the answer. I don't know how much. Because certainly in conversations that I had, the focus was on the skills. So it wasn't. That wasn't emphasized. Now there were brief conversations, but it was more about how you would prepare, how I would prepare here before going out, and it was focused on skills. With the different ball, but so I probably wouldn't have been aware of that, to be honest. And a lot of the players that have gone out are mature players, for want of a better word. So like the risk of injury is very high. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I don't know enough about the sport, because any of them, when I chatted to Cora and chatted to other ones about it before, it very much depends on your position and the role. I'm sure there's areas where a lot of the Irish ones that went out seem to be forwards, and I don't know if there's more space. I don't know enough about it, but certainly from my perspective, I wasn't aware of how physical it really was.
Peter, on that point, Peter, the Gaelic football's changed an awful lot. If you think about even going back to say the 90s to the modern day, and 25 years on, just watching a few videos during lockdown, and we go back and watch the games in the 90s, the referee and the way the game's played compared to now. Have we got to the stage with sanitized Gaelic football slightly, do you think, or have we lost a bit of an edge in the way Was it better that we look back at Rose said it last year? Jesus, it was great that time. You had to do this, not do that. Do you think we've sanitized the game too much?
After watching the ladies AFL, yes, we have sanitized it. But no, I think there's still room for physicality in the game, and the you're talking about athletes earlier on. There's athletes playing the game now. When I started, you could have come up against a cornerback that was a bit beefy on it and physical and all the rest, and you knew I'll skin this boy for speed or agility. That's not happening now. And the cornerbacks back then may have been, when we were playing, Paddy, they may have been stoppers. Now the cornerbacks are going up the pitch and kicking the ball over the bar, kicking the back. They're footballers. So the game has transformed. But the massive change that has taken place in recent years has been the tactical side of the game. And one of your guests last week or the week before, Jim McGuinness, largely responsible for that. And what players are capable of now, again, it used to be you went out and played your own game, played your position. That's all you worried about. Now there's different styles, there's different way of playing the game, and you have to fit into the systems in order to get the best out of the team and to get the best out of those around you. So I'd say that's the biggest change that has taken the place in the game, and that's all for good. I know Jim was widely criticised for this blanket defence, but it is just another part of how our game has evolved. It has moved on since that. We know how to counteract and how to play against it. So, it was refreshing at the time, then not so refreshing when everybody tried to do it and couldn't do it well. But things, again, have moved on, how to counteract. So the tactical side and in terms of tactics, I think that's the biggest challenge to coaches and managers and indeed players now. But the other thing is you need to be careful you don't OTT go over the top in that regard either. And it is a sport, and boys like to get a training to enjoy themselves, to have a bit of crack. You want to learn and you want to get better, of course you do. But there's that's where your good coaches come in. They make the sessions enjoyable. There's learning in it, but there's also fun in it as well, and the team should get something out of it.
And Peter, Caroline mentioned there too about when you broke into their math team, Caroline was the O'Donnell twins. Peter, did you look when you back in what age you made your debut for Tyrone? 18?
89, 18.
You're 18, and that'd have been Plunk. Who would have been the player you?
Yeah, a lot of household names in Tyrone at the time: Kevin McCabe, Damien O'Hagan, John Lynch, Eugene McKenna, Kieran McGarvey. So got to play.
You are old.
Around a few blocks, Paddy. But look, for me at that age to get playing with those players, those are the players that I had looked up to and seen playing in an All-Ireland final for Tyrone in '86. So it was fantastic to play with them and to learn from them. But as you say, it was a different type of game then, very much so.
And say in terms of the opponents, who would have been the one player you always find that Jesus every day you played him it was going to be. You probably name me wearing a white jersey, red stripe across the middle of it, probably and played number 2.
There's a good chance. I struggled a bit with asthma and often said that was me in various games that I played. That was my most difficult opponent. But without doubt, I'd say it was Kieran McKeever from Dungiven and Derry. Tenacious, hard hitting, but the best quality from his point of view was that his reading of the game. It wasn't just he wasn't a sticky man marker. He was reading the game and he was preventing me from getting the ball. I would have been confident if I'd have got the ball on any defender that I would have been capable of doing something. But he was that good, and his reading of the game was that good that there was games that I played, and the one game that I was taken off for playing poorly for Tyrone was in the early 90s. It was against Derry, and the reason was Kieran McKeever was marking me, and I just couldn't get my hands on the ball. So without a shadow of a doubt, Kieran McKeever would have been my toughest opponent. And
another question here is who's the best player you played with? No, not just in Tyrone, but maybe even at Ulster level, international rules, whatever. One, as any player stood out, Jesus, that's special there,
outside of Tyrone, I would. Seamus Moynihan was one player that I've seen a lot of at college. Played against him at underage. Played against him at provincial level, and played with him in Ireland. Played Australia in the compromise rules, and he was a full package. And he ended up playing and winning All Irelands with Kerry at full back because they were stuck for a full back. Yet he went in and performed that job. He could have played midfield. He could have played centre back. And from a Throne point of view, I was blessed to have played with some of the finest players ever to have worn a Throne jersey. To play with Stevie O'Neill, Owen Mulligan, Sean Kavanagh, transformed Throne in my opinion. The way he played midfield, he was up and down the pitch. He could score. He could win ball. He like a superb player and stood the test of time. So, and in terms of leaders, we're talking about earlier, and every team needs a dog. There wasn't a better dog about than Dooher. And his leadership was inspirational to play under, and you learn so much from him. So look, from that point of view, I can look back and knowing that I've played with some of the best.
Good stuff. Caroline, you went to the Commonwealth Games a few years ago. I know Elaine was your head coach. Do you want to tell us something about Elaine's coaching style? No, leave it. We'll leave it for that. Yeah, hey, what an experience! You went to Australia, like, you know. I know the weeks of preparation up to that, Elaine was at work here, and she was flat out getting her work wrapped up, so she wanted to get away. And geez, we were so envious of her heading away to Commonwealth Games, professional sport in Australia. It must have been some experience to play in that.
Yeah, I think probably my experience was probably more enjoyable than Elaine's, in so much as, you know, she had no downtime. The games coming in, and I know what said about having games in very quick succession is great, but if you have a game every day, you know, you think about, as the coach, having to, you know, watch the game with the PA, look at the next opposition, chat to the players who were on, give them feedback, you know, chat to the players who didn't get on, give them feedback, and try and keep them built up, because it's a very intense environment when you go to something like a games, because everybody's living in one house for 3 weeks plus. You know, so that's intense, and you have people maybe who are sharing a room who, you know, someone's getting on, someone's not getting on. That's very, very difficult, and trying to keep that unity within the group and harmony within the group is very, very difficult to manage. So I certainly wouldn't envy Elaine's position in that. You know, very much I was there to focus on what I was doing, you know, listen to what she said, you know, enjoy the atmosphere, feed off the energy in the village, you know.
When she tells you to leave the pub, Caroline, you leave the pub and go home.
Every time, yeah.
You will. But, you know, see when you think of Australia and New Zealand, you know, the top, you know, you're like the top teams in netball. Like, you look at them, and you see that, you know, you've done remarkably well to get that closest last number of years. But what is the difference in those top international teams? Even, you know, the British team, the English team. What is the difference at the moment? Is just personnel really, or what defines it?
Well, obviously they're professional teams. So what I see the difference being is that, I suppose, what's the difference in a professional and amateur, really? But in terms of our backroom team, and I'm not just saying this because Elaine's obviously in here, but I would say our backroom team, in terms of coaches, S&C, physio, PA, we're on a par with any team that we were playing against. But what we had to take into account was that we didn't have the financial backing to have any competitive opportunities. So what we do is we go to a tournament, and you improve as the tournament goes on because of that opportunity to play matches. And then you do well and you finish playing really well. Then we could go a year without another test match or competitive opportunity, and you're back to square one. So that's very difficult. You have players who are essentially paying to go to these competitions. So trying to train in the run up to these, you know, players are missing training sessions because they have to work, and they can't afford to fly home because they have to pay for their flights themselves to get to training. You know, that element of things is really, really difficult to manage, because as I said, the setup was excellent, and if everyone that was there was able to commit to it, you know, it would have been a very, very different story, I think. You know, the likes of Australia and England, and, you know, the very, very top nations, certainly they that's an advantage. And, you know, they do have very, very talented players. They have players who are 6 foot, 7 foot tall. We don't have that. But even in and around ourselves, I think we certainly could be a lot closer to the top 5-6 teams in the world, which is unbelievable for a nation, you know, the size of Northern Ireland. But you know, we're certainly held back by financial restraints, I would say. And then whenever you aren't under that umbrella of professional sports, you know, you have a different mindset within the group. So, you know, while you have players who train in a professional way and they are very much netballers, you also have people who are there who just play netball. So it's an add-on to their life, you know, and it fits around what they're doing in the rest of their life. And you can't really criticize that because, you know, it's not a professional sport, but it's I suppose that's the challenge that Elaine and the other coaches would have had, obviously, to get people to buy into that professional environment without actually having that label.
Peter, we had a big debate last week about, and Jim was quite open about Dublin, about, you know, I suppose there's been talk about professional environment. I know we have noticed at university level, I've watched this Dublin thing grow over the last 15 years. When you're playing against them at college level, third level, Sigerson Cup and Ryan Cup, you just notice the scholarship system between DCU and UCD and DIT, and the system of every one of those Dublin players is coming through a semi-professional, you know, third level environment, you know. When then they come into senior, it just means that they've built these athletes, and then they go into senior level, just continues on. Do you feel as if now there's a massive gap between Dublin and the rest now at the moment, or you feel as if, you know, that it's not that big a gap, or is this just an exceptional bunch of players they've had at the right time?
First of all, it's good Caroline's Man United supporter. She's drinking out of a Man United cup. I'm glad to see that, Caroline. That's good. You've sense.
Big game tonight. Big game tonight. Quarter past 5. 4-3.
It's a wee bit of both as an answer to that. 25 years ago, Dublin had serious problems to address, and moving forward, and nobody was in awe, or nobody feared playing Dublin at any level. You know, and that's only about 20 years ago. So they had problems. They addressed those problems. In fairness to them, they've got their own house in order, and you have to admire somebody off the field of play with the strategic intelligence and the nuance of John Costello to take everybody to have the vision, first of all, to be fit to see it through, to get the best out of it, to say what they were going to do, and pull so many people with them. I think that deserves credit from their point of view, and to see so many youngsters in our capital engaged and playing Gaelic games is good to see, and I would rather see that than playing rugby or soccer. So so many other counties have to get their own house in order. First of all, and there's no guarantee, Paddy, if in some of those cases, if you were to hand some of the structure, some of the people that are in charge of those counties £10 million, there's absolutely no guarantee that county would be any better off in 5 years because of poor management, because they wouldn't know what to do, they wouldn't know where to start. So after saying that, I think the time has come now where Dublin are self-sufficient. They don't need handouts from the GAA. Look at the marketing power that they have as a county. Nobody else, there's soccer teams don't have it over in England. So less of the handouts to Dublin, and try and help other counties to get into that position where, and every county's different, but they do need support and setting up, getting the right structures in place. And then it's a case of giving everybody that wants to play our game the best of coaching and the best of opportunity to be as good as they can be, and to compete on an equal footing. So the challenge for the Dublin, or for the Thrones and the Armaghs, is that to give our players the opportunity where they don't have to worry about other things maybe that are very much consuming their lives and whatever, and try and make things that wee bit easier for them, so they can commit to the county team, give it their all. And it's only a short period of time in their lives that they're going to be asked to play for or be able to play for their county. So it's a case of getting that evened out a wee bit, and hopefully then the gap will begin to close on Dublin and the rest.
Yeah, just some, like Jim McGuinness said last week, there's nothing wrong with being obsessive. you know, being obsessive is seen to be a bad thing, you know, and you're obsessive with your sport and you're obsessive. He says, but maybe you need to accept if that's what it is, you're obsessive and it's not a bad, you know. So maybe we have to change that mindset with the young people too, about training, about preparation, about, I have seen obsessive athletes in St Mary's here over the years. They're the best we have. You know, and not only are they obsessive when it comes to their training and their sleep and their preparation, they're also, when it comes to doing their schoolwork, they're the top of their classes, their time management, they're maybe working 2 part-time jobs, but they're obsessive about doing the best they can. So there's nothing wrong with it. So if anybody's out there and feels they're getting slagged off because they're obsessive, embrace it, because that's just what you are.
Well, I think there's a quote somewhere that perfection, as human beings, perfection's not attainable, but striving for perfection is attainable. And again, from my experience of fellas that were playing inter-county level, Cormac McAnallen and Dooher and these boys, you're studying at a high level and performing at a high level, going away on coach trips with the books out in front and the earphones in, and they were tuned in for that 2 hours on the bus. They were using that time to study and whatever. But yet, when you seen those boys training, when you seen them on the pitch, when you seen the extras that they were doing, they made time to be as best that they can be. So you've got to take heart from that, and you don't have to be, you know, overly talented to be successful. And again, sport parallels what goes on in life. As long as you're aware of what you want to begin with, and be damn determined to go about getting there, then you'll overcome those hurdles and those setbacks to get where you want to be. So that obsessive nature or that single-mindedness, I think, has to be in you, and you really need to know what you want to do. And then after that, it's stick at it and go for it.
Well, listen, guys, we're coming up to the last 3 minutes here, and we said we'd wrap because you're very busy, Caroline. If you get back, get ready, prepare, and if you work to do, and Peter, I'm not sure actually why you're leaving, but you said you have to wrap up all the flat. Here, I have a message, Peter, a message coming on my phone there from Kieran McGee, and he says, is there any chance you would teach a PE lesson this year?
Kieran McGee, is that? I see a few names that are recognised on your list there. A Holy Trinity pupils will vouch that I worked very hard. Dervla McChrystal, I see her name there, maybe Suneva Kelly. I hope they're working as well up in St Mary's as they did in Holy Trinity. And we're still waiting. We're still waiting on Caroline O'Hanlon to come down to speak to our pupils at some stage. She's promised me she's going to do that, so I look forward to that.
Peter, just probably we need to just think your time is in Mary's, Peter. We have to go back now. I know this has come back today. Study was tough that time, wasn't it?
Studying the library was the favourite place for me to be in back in those that on the training pitch out at the back, Paddy. But I presume you don't have any students like Benny Tierney at the college now, because
I have actually a few. That same shape now, the same mentality.
There's only one Benny Tierney. But it's interesting to see. There's another gentleman I see that's tuned in there, John Brawley. I'd want to wish him all the very best. Normally, a lot of distinguished people leave St Mary's to go and work for the Irish News. With John, it's the other way about. He's come back to work in St Mary's, so all the very best, John.
I would like to have John on board. Caroline, last minute words of advice. We'll start off with, we asked you at the very end of our talks. Number, what are you looking forward to now when this thing opens up? And second thing, words of advice you give to our young people out there on how to come out of this the best they can, from a GP's point of view and from a sporting point of view.
Well, I think that this, there has been positive aspects of the whole COVID pandemic and the lockdowns, and just an appreciation for, what the GAA is about outside of just playing matches and training. Certainly after the first lockdown, what I was just looking forward to getting back for the crack, just to see everybody having just a bit of banter and, enjoying training with people. And having that support around you. And I think that when we reflect on it, that's probably the thing that you miss the most is just getting out and about with your mates and enjoying training.
Mm-hmm.
So while obviously we're talking about being really focused and very determined in terms of elite sport and training, we have to enjoy it, and I think sometimes we do lose that, and you become caught up in details, and ultimately if you're enjoying your sport, you're playing your best, and not to lose sight of that.
Okay, thank you. And Peter, last words with yourself. What are you looking forward to now in the next wee while when things open up again, and final words of advice to our students?
The 2 words, well, 1 word that Caroline said there strikes a chord, and that's enjoy. That's why we all play football, and that's why we go to work, because we enjoy doing it. So for your students to get back out and enjoy it, that's why we take part in sport. And after that, with the enjoyment comes enjoy and achieve. See what you can get out of it. Word of warning now, compared to the time when we were at college, we didn't have to worry about social media, Paddy, and the friends we made were real friends. So don't let that be a hindrance. You'll not achieve anything sitting at home and in front of the screen. Get out, get meeting friends, enjoy your sport, and push it to the limits, because you can always look back and reflect on great memories and the great friendships that you had and we've had at St Mary's and further afield. They will last forever. So get out and make the memories on the field of play, and enjoy your time at college. I wish I was back there.
Well, listen, Peter, thank you so much for coming on today, and Caroline, yourself, making time for our students. This is our final talks. This wraps up our Thursday chats, and listen, it's been a lovely way to finish it off. Listen, good luck to both of you. Good luck to Caroline and our sport with the Thunder, with Northern Ireland Netball, and with Armagh. And Peter, good luck to whatever you're going to be doing. So just you just enjoy yourself. Is that all right?
All right, we're getting a new school in Holy Trinity, and I'm raising a few pounds for it. So I'll be calling on you, Patrick. Thanks very much.
That wouldn't be the first time. Well, listen, good luck to you all. Thank you very much for coming on, and good luck to the students out there. Enjoy yourselves, and stay out of the Holy Lands next week. Okay, last night. Good luck. All the best.
Thanks.
Cheers, thank you.
Bye.